In today's class, let's continue our discussion on the perturbative solution of the density matrix. In particular, we will calculate it for the optical light matter interaction. And then the first order density matrix we will use to calculate the first order optical susceptibility, which is related to the polarization. And polarization appears in Maxwell's equation. So it can change the properties of how light propagates through a medium, etc. And it will have an impact on absorption, reflection, transmission, polarization, rotation, and things like that. Okay. So we will calculate the first order susceptibility today, and you will see that using this trick you can already calculate the second order and third order susceptibilities easily. I mean to any order, but yeah, second and third are important because there are a lot of experiments that we do on them. Okay. Okay. So here's our generalized equation for the time evolution of the density matrix. First part coming from quantum mechanics. Second part is the added term, which comes from phenomenologically including those interactions which do not explicitly go into the Hamiltonian, right? Okay. And then we systematically reviewed how we do the perturbation theory of this, etc. So H, the interacting Hamiltonian, not H0. H0 is a typo here. So H goes to H0 plus Vt. And to do the perturbation theory, I just include a parameter lambda, which goes from 0 to 1. And then I make an assumption or an ansaz or a guess that rho I can write in this particular form. So rho nm I can write as 0th power of lambda plus first power of lambda, second power of lambda, and so on and so forth, etc. Okay. I take these two equations, I feed it into the equation of motion. I'll get a power series in lambda. I can shift all the terms to the left side, etc. And right side will be 0. Then I will argue that since this is a power series in lambda, each term to all orders in lambda should vanish basically. So if I do this, I'll start getting this kind of equation of motion. So rho nm 0 dot is equal to I omega nm, and I omega nm is omega n minus omega m, remember, times rho 0 minus this phenomenological damping term. And for rho 1, I'll start having this term where the extra term is V commutator with rho. And remember that V is the time dependent perturbation. Okay. And similarly for the kth order, k plus 1th order, and we can solve it order by order. And to solve this equation of motion, etc., I explicitly showed in the last class that for large enough time scales, which is decided by this damping parameter, so T much larger than gamma nm inverse, rho nm 0 has to be equal to rho nm equilibrium. Okay. And in equilibrium, in the absence of perturbation, etc., I cannot have interband coherences, etc. So rho nm equilibrium is 0 if n is not equal to m. So all of these things we showed explicitly in the last class. Okay. And we will proceed from here today. Okay. Okay. And using this equation of motion, we can integrate it, and we showed explicitly that rho nm1 time dependent function I can write as minus infinity to t integral of this quantity Vt prime rho 0 nm times this integrating factor, which is e to the power I omega nm plus gamma nm. So again, there is a typo here. So the I goes inside the bracket with omega nm. Okay, so e to the power I omega nm plus gamma nm times t prime minus t, where the integration is over dt prime. So this we showed explicitly in the last class. And today we want to continue. So this was a very general theory, perturbation theory. Any perturbation Vt, I'll have exactly this. And today I want to continue with light matter interaction. Okay. And just to connect it to what we did in the earlier classes. So in the earlier class, if you remember, we had the Schrodinger equation, and we did the minimal coupling. In presence of electromagnetic field, my canonical momentum changes, and P vector goes to P vector minus EA in SI units. And then since Hamiltonian of a system in the momentum space is a function of momentum, and momentum has changed, etc., then I can expand the Hamiltonian by writing it as power series, Taylor power series in terms of EA, etc. So I'll have 0th order term, I'll have a first order term, and then I'll have second order terms, etc. Okay, so these are not written very accurately. Ideally, I should put in all the directional derivatives, etc., and be very careful when I write this. But this is just to give you a qualitative idea. Okay, because dot p2, for example, will have a lot of terms which I have not explicitly written here, right? Otherwise, the meaning is also not clear. Okay, what is dot 2p? No, and what is this vector into a vector? So I have not defined explicitly that I am taking scalar product, vector product, or what, etc. Okay, so one has to be a bit careful about this equation, but you get the idea that in powers of ax, ay, and az, I'll have first order term, second order term, third order term, and so on. And this is precisely what we did in the last class. So in the previous classes, etc., when we wrote down the Schrodinger equation for atomic systems, etc., we had a h is equal to p square by 2m plus a potential term which did not depend on the momentum, right? So I have skipped that here. And if h is p square by 2m, then the first derivative of h for a spherically symmetric system, if you take, then I have only the derivative with respect to p, and you will get just a p by m. Okay, and this p by m multiplied with the EA gave me the VT. So the light matter interaction to first order in the applied electric field, basically, right? So that gave me this EA by M, M coming from the P by M, and this operator minus IH, a del, which where the del was in the real space because it's a momentum operator, basically. Right? And using this VT, we all explicitly calculate everything in terms of A, right? And A there was related to the E by means of derivative. So E was minus dA by dt. Okay, so that's the connection of electric field of light with the matter interaction, etc. Okay. Okay. So this form of doing this coupling or light matter interaction, there's a specific name for it. So here what I do is minimal coupling of the momentum. Okay, and momentum is related to the velocity. So this way of doing light matter interaction has a name in the literature. This is called velocity gauge. Okay, there's one framework for treating light matter interaction, and there's a so this is what we did in the previous class. Okay, and there's a completely another way of treating light matter interaction. Okay, and that is called position gauge, basically. So light matter interaction in that gauge, I did minimal coupling, etc. And I can choose another gauge in which I will say that the vector potential is completely zero, and light couples with matter, etc., explicitly by the scalar potential. And that scalar potential will be given by the dipole of the atom times the electric field, basically. So that's all. Okay. So Vt you can write as minus mu times E tilde T. And remember here, I am using the notation of Bloyd. And wherever he uses tilde, he means number one, vector, and number two, very fast time dependent quantities. Okay. So E tilde, for example, is sum over P, E vector omega P. Okay. So the tilde has gone to vector, and the fast time dependence I have written explicitly outside. So e to the power minus I omega P T. And in my experiments, I can do experiment by applying more than one frequency radiation simultaneously, which can also have different polarizations, etc. So there's a generic framework. So E is sum over all different frequencies P, omega P times e to the power minus I omega T. Okay. And this way of treating light matter interaction is called the position gauge. Okay. And this is also used a lot in the literature. And in fact, the whole of Bloyd's book will use this framework, and both are equally valid. Both will give you physically consistent answers, which are identical to each other. Okay, so different methods, but they all proceed and give you the same answer. Okay, but if you calculate higher order susceptibilities, then the path will slightly vary. Ultimately, you will get the same answer, but when you are calculating, it may look like that you are calculating different quantities, and the physical meaning of what you calculate, you can interpret in slightly different ways, basically. Okay, and there's a lot of debate in the literature, community, etc., that velocity gauge is better, position gauge is better. You use either one, I am fine actually, as long as you can do accurate calculations in either of these and reach a final answer which will match with the experiment. I have absolutely no complaint. So two different methods, velocity gauge, position gauge. Okay. And we already did velocity gauge in the wave function framework. So let's also have a look at the what do you call position gauge in this density matrix framework, basically. Okay. And we will have a simple problem. So let's define the problem. Uh, single, so order one, meaning single optical transitions in a two level system for now. Okay. In the wave function picture, we had the level ground state as A and the excited state as B. Here we can write them as, M and N, just to, bring it to Bloid's notation. And I can have more than one frequency of light incident on it, omega 1, omega 2, omega 3. Different frequencies indicated by different colors. In fact, I can have more. And I can take atoms which were in the A excited state to the B excited state. And the dots show basically that initially I had some population of A and some population of B, and I can keep changing the population. Okay, so this is an ensemble experiment. I have more than one atom, and the ground state of the ensemble is decided by how many atoms are in the A ground state and how many atoms are in the B ground state. So this picture doesn't show the ground state, it shows both A and B excited states. Okay, so some levels, some atoms are in A, some atoms are in B. I may know the number exactly, Na, Nb, or Nm, Nn, etc., and that will decide my optical absorption. So if I shine these kind of lights, etc., then how much will be absorbed, how much will be let's say, reflected back, transmitted through that system, etc. All of that we are going to calculate in a minute. Okay, any questions till now? Velocity gauge,
Sir,
position gauge, yeah.
so just a little confusion that means where we are expanding the Hamiltonian in a Taylor series, right?
Right.
So we would basically do 1 by twice m into p square, where p is replaced by p minus ea.
Right.
So there is a minus sign. So why are
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
taking?
Okay, so I may have missed the minus sign, so you may be correct actually. So I have missed the minus sign here. Yeah, so that's my mistake.
Okay, means minus sign will be initially present from this like expansion
Yeah,
equation,
yeah, yeah,
and then it will
yeah,
be
yeah. So here
following.
also there's a minus sign. You're correct actually. So this is my mistake, typo mistake. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So this is a typo. Completely my mistake. You are accurate. Okay. So just a minute. Yeah. So that's a mistake. Yeah. So I'm doing a Taylor expansion around A is equal to 0. So I should have a minus EA. Sure. Here also I should have a minus EA and a minus EA in the bracket. Here also minus EA. Okay. So you are right. Okay. Any other correction or a comment, question? Okay. So this idea of velocity gauge and position gauge is clear, I hope. Okay. Okay. So a lot of papers we will see that they'll work in position gauge,
Hello,
and
sir.
yeah. Sunit, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sir. What is minimal coupling?
Minimal coupling is this
Hello.
P goes to P minus EA in presence of light, right?
Yes, sir.
That's just a name for this minimal coupling, no? So it is called minimal coupling. So a lot of papers, if you read, they will just say that we will treat light matter interaction by using minimal coupling, and that just implies that the momentum of particles or charged particles in presence of an electromagnetic field changes. Okay, so P goes to P minus EA by C in the CGS units. That's what you must have been used to, and in SI units, just P goes to P minus EA. So this equation is called equation of minimal coupling, or yeah, physically it is called minimal coupling.
Okay.
And you can derive this explicitly by writing the Lagrangian of the particle plus the Lagrangian of the electromagnetic field, etc. And then that Lagrangian you can effectively write like the
Yes.
Lagrangian of the particle, where you do this substitution, P goes to P minus EA. Okay. Yeah, so this will be given in textbooks, and it is
Yes.
also given in the appendix of one of these. So the brands, Branston and Jacochen, the main textbook for this course. It is also given in one of the appendix of that course. Okay. Okay. And yeah, okay.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, a single optical transition means at a certain time A to B or B to A.
yeah. So only, yeah. So very good question actually. So single optical transition I have not defined right now actually. Okay, but I am thinking in terms of quantum limit where I'll only absorb or emit one photon.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, so very good question, because right now I have not defined it. Uh, so it will turn out that this will involve, so what I call single optical transition will involve first order changes in the density matrix. So the first order correction, which depends only on one power of E or A, etc. Those processes only involve single photon processes. Okay. So that connection I will make below.
Okay.
But in advance, I am calling them single optical transitions. Meaning one instance. So either A atom goes to a B atom, or vice versa. B atom goes to a atom. Both will be possible. We will see just below. And yeah. So basically, first order perturbation theory will always give me one photon processes, and those I call single optical transitions. So this will become clear when we find the answer below. Okay. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any other question? Okay, then let's proceed. Okay. So remember, we have, for calculating the time dependence of rho 1, no? Rho 1 t, we had to calculate this commutator Vt with the rho 0, no? Okay. So let's write this explicitly. So Vt and rho matrix product, let's write. So sum over k, Vnk rho km minus rho 0. So 0 is missing here. Okay. So it seems that, yeah, I was a bit careless in making my notes today. So yeah, so rho nk 0 vkm. Okay. And then V, I will just substitute from this light matter interaction form minus mu, where mu was minus E times R cap. R is the position operator. Okay. So the dipole. So the energy of a matter changes in the electromagnetic field by means of this. So the dipole of that atom with the electric field amplitude, basically. Okay. So this is the notation. So mu itself is minus E, charge of the electron times R, where minus E includes the sign of the minus sign, and E is always greater than 0. Okay. So in this notation, so a lot of papers, I generally get confused, whether E includes the sign of the charge or not. It is a greater number. So I write it explicitly generally. Okay. So a good practice generally. Okay. So we were calculating the commutator of V and rho. So we do this. Then of course V and K had a mu and a E. So E I send outside, right? Because E will not have any N or K. The matter properties related indexes. So the matter property only comes in the dipole moment. So V just becomes, whatever was V, I replace by mu, minus sign for minus mu dot E. So V N K, and here V K M, it just becomes K M. So nothing, I just rewritten basically. Okay. And then remember that it was rho 0. So rho 0 was a diagonal matrix, etc. So all of those terms are 0 unless k is equal to m. No? So then I just use that. So sum over, okay, so sum over k, sorry, not nu, sum over k. Okay. So this is matrix product sum over k. Okay. So I start summing over k, all the terms will go to 0 unless k is m. So if I do that, then I'll just get this rho 0 mm mu n, and k is m. And similarly here, I'll start getting k, I do sum, all terms are 0 unless k is n. So rho 0 nn mu n m, basically. So I've just rewritten this. Okay. Okay, so mu nm and mu nm is common. So I can just write this as rho nm0 minus rho nn0 times mu nm dot e tilde t, basically. Okay. So you already see that the light matter interaction has this population difference. So this quantity I'll call population difference, right? So this was the ground state, this was the excited state. So how many more electrons are there in the ground state than in the excited state, basically. So this is called population difference. Okay. And the light matter interaction cares quite a bit about this quantum statistics, that how many particles are here, how many particles are there, and so on. Okay. So that has already become built into the system. Okay. Okay. Once I have this, then I can just take my row 1 equation, which I had just rewritten here, right? So this equation we had solved in the previous class, we revised it in the beginning, etc. So I take that equation and I just substitute this calculation, whatever I have calculated. Yeah, without even writing the full form of ET for now, let's say, right? So then I am just having this equation, which is rho nm1t is equal to I by h times this difference of population times mu nm dot this quantity, uh, which had a time dependence, t time dependence, so it can come out of the integral times this t prime integral, which has e prime t, e tilde t prime times this e to the power I omega nm plus gamma nm t prime. Okay, so again there's typos in both of these equations, so the I goes inside. Okay, so I omega nm plus gamma nm, here also I omega nm plus gamma nm. Okay, and then you do this. So again here's a typo, so the I should go inside the bracket, so I omega nm plus gamma nm. Okay, otherwise gamma nm becomes frequency where it is broadening. Okay, so I'm just rewriting this term by bringing all the terms which are not dependent on time to the left, etc. And the dipole moment is taken scalar product with the E, of course, and E I will explicitly write now in terms of its omega p dependence. So E is sum over P, E omega p, and recall this green bracket here because this will continue in the next line. And E omega p, of course, was dependent on omega p. So if I bring the t prime factors all together, etc., then it just becomes minus infinity to t times e to the power I omega mn minus omega p whole bracket plus gamma nm. So this factor is now written correctly at last. Okay, t prime dt prime. So this I have not done anything, just rewritten our first order solution in terms of explicitly form of dipole matrix element and the EPs basically. Okay. And the whole time dependence is coming from this integral plus this extra term. So the ones highlighted in blue. So the time dependent terms I can combine. So this was the term which is outside, and this is the term which I integrate. So integrate e to the power I alpha t is e to the power I alpha t divided by I alpha. That's what it is. And then the limits were minus infinity to t, right? So minus infinity to t. And because of this gamma nm term, minus infinity will vanish because e to the power minus gamma nm t prime. Okay, so there should be a minus sign outside. Okay, so e to the power minus gamma nm t prime. Sorry. So e to the power gamma mn with a minus t, minus infinity. So t prime goes to minus infinity. This term will vanish, and only the t term will contribute basically. Okay, when I put in the t term, then I have e to the power I omega nm t, which cancels out this e to the power minus I omega nm t, and which also cancels out this gamma nm t term, etc. Here there's a minus sign, there's no minus sign here. And I'm just left with this particular term. So e to the power I omega pt, and the denominator is as it is basically. Okay. Okay. So that is great because we have solved the first order density matrix. So the first order density matrix can be written in terms of the population difference times mu nm. So the dipole matrix element. Okay, and that is why. So light matter interaction is dictated in this length gauge by this dipole matrix element. So you will see this word dipole matrix element a lot of times wherever you read the optics related papers. Okay, and this is what controls the material related properties. This is where the symmetry of the wave function, etc., which transitions, selection rules, etc., will come into play. Okay, so this will become 0 for specific choices of orbitals, etc., etc. Okay, but I digress. So coming back, so mu dot E omega P, where I'll sum over all the P frequencies times e to the power minus I omega Pt, and this is the sum. So this is the solution for our light matter interaction problem, where where a lot of different frequency lights were incident on the system, basically. Okay. Okay. Then this is important. No, we should really be happy about this, because now rho 1 I can use to calculate rho 2, and then rho 2 I can use to calculate rho 3, and so on. Okay. And more interestingly, for this light matter interaction problem, Rho 1 only depends on time as e to the power minus I omega t. No? So this term will combine with the V dependence, which is also of this form, etc. And all the integrations, time dependent integrations will become easy. So they will have explicitly this kind of form, and I can actually do the integration and calculate them. Okay? But let's not go there. Let's come back, etc. So then you can ask a question, what are the physical observable which is impacted by this light matter interactions, right? So what is the physical quantity that I can calculate and which are accessible by experiments? Okay. So one physical quantity that you will find which comes immediately to mind is the polarization of the system. Okay. And the polarization of the system is nothing but the expectation value of its dipole moment. Okay. So for a single atom, if I define the dipole moment as this mu t, expectation value over the whole ensemble, let's say, then this I can write as mu0 plus mu1 plus mu2, just like the density matrix expansion. And since I'm taking the expectation value of the ensemble, so each power of mu k is given by trace of rho k times mu, basically. So mu is just an operator, so it will have a fixed density matrix, but the density matrix depends on orders, etc. So that defines this order of mu in terms of the density matrix, and this is the trace, basically. Okay, and density matrix, we already showed that density matrix for our problem will be sum over p to the power I omega pt. So then I can write this whole thing as, sum over p to the power I omega pt times mu omega p of the kth power, basically. Okay. So mu t I can expand in terms of its Fourier coefficients using this relation, where mu k omega p gives me the kth Fourier component, which is just given by rho k times mu without the time dependence. Okay. Now this was for a single atom. Now for the whole ensemble, because light will not interact only with a single atom, so whatever physical property I observe will be coming from the whole collection of atoms. So the total polarization, etc., which I will use to feed into the Maxwell's equation, etc., and calculate light propagation properties, is given by n, which is the atomic number density. So per unit volume, so the polarization per unit volume, let's say, is given by the atomic number density per unit volume times the polarization of one atom. Okay, and this is in the frequency space. So the Fourier transform of the actual time dependent polarization is defined as n times mu of omega p. Okay, and this polarization goes into Maxwell's equation. It will modify the absorption, reflection, transmission of light, etc., which we can measure. Okay, and yeah, so that's where the physically measurable quantities come in, etc. But another important quantity that I can define using this concept of polarization, which I just defined as n times mu, is this epsilon times chi1 times this E of omega p. Okay, so I defined p. I just defined it in terms of what is called this quantity chi1, which I will call linear optical susceptibility. Okay, and chi1 is just to remind you that I am dealing with the first order terms, and similarly I'll have a second order, third order terms, and so on. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, before proceeding further, just wanted to highlight that remember that this P polarization is a vector, right? So it's a 3-component object. So there's a vector written. And in this equation, EP, so E of omega P is a vector. So it is also 3-component object. So this chi1, whatever I have written, has to be a 2-component object or a second rank tensor or a matrix, basically, right? Because I can calculate Px, and here I will have a chi xx, chi yx plus chi zx times ex, ey, ez, term by term, etc. Okay. So is that clear, basically? Any questions here?
Sir, chi1, what does represents this one?
Chi1 is the first order correction in chi.
Okay.
Okay, so I can extend this equation. So I can write P is equal to, something which is first order into E plus chi2, second order chi, times E1 and E2, or E into E. Okay, E omega 1 into E omega 2, And then I can write chi3 into E omega 1 plus into E omega 2 into E omega 3 and so on. Okay, so this order 1 will imply one interaction with light, so single optical transition and so on. Second order will imply two interactions with light, so two photons, etc., or two interactions with light and so on. Okay. And experimentally, of course, the linear response results are most important. So we generally look at the linear response regime in most experiments, and that is chi1. And then the second order response is called, second harmonic generation, or some frequency generation, or a difference frequency generation, etc. So that also we measure in experiment, but those are called second harmonic experiments. And the third order, again, we calculate in another set of experiments. So those are called third order susceptibility, and likewise higher order susceptibilities, basically. Is that clear? Any other question here? And we can measure some experimentally physical quantity, etc. And many of these physical quantities which arise from polarization, etc., I'll ultimately express in terms of this chi. And I calculate the theoretically calculated chi with the experimentally measured, let's say polarization, if I can calculate, or I'll calculate some property which depends on the polarization, etc. And I can relate it to the chi. So, but chi is basically the material property which comes into play, and this material property depends on what atoms are there, what are their states, what are the populations, statistics, everything, etc. And the damping, etc. All of this goes into chi. Once I know that, then I can predict the light matter interaction in terms of polarization to first order, second order, third order, and that is the idea. Okay. So it's called linear optical susceptibility. And if I explicitly write down the expression, just from this definition here, because we explicitly calculated mu of omega p. Okay, we just calculated the density matrix, but mu is just a matrix. So I can immediately calculate the mu explicitly, this quantity, and then derive this. So it will just be given by n by chi h times sum over nm, the density matrix terms. Okay, so till mu nm, exactly everything is just the density matrix term, basically, times 1 power of mu comes from this mu nm. Okay, so I have two factors of mu mn and mu nm, and if I sum over n and m, then this just becomes a number. Okay, and that's how I have this basically. Okay, and remember that here mu is a vector, m and n are the optical level indices, right? So mu is a vector, so mu has three components, etc. And depending on which component of this and which component of this I am looking at, I can actually write down the chi ij coefficients, which are exactly the same equation as above, except that this is now mu mn. So the ith component of the electronic dipole moment for the mn sandwich between the mn. So basically Rx, let's say Ri sandwich between the m and the m operator, basically. So that's what this is. Okay. So this is the first order susceptibility, which already includes the population difference, etc. So the initial population difference. And you will find that the second order will include, again, similar kind of terms, plus a lot of other terms, etc. So we will do explicit calculation of at least the second order susceptibility. Okay. But yeah, so this is the calculation for the first order susceptibility, and we can stop here, or we can do a bit more work with it, etc. So I can separate out this term and this term, etc. And then remember that, I can change some terms in the sense that gamma n and m should be equal to gamma m and n. And then omega mn is just minus of omega nm. So I can use this kind of a relations, etc. And I can rewrite this equation in another form, in which it is generally written in books, etc. So I can write this density difference terms in two different parts, etc. And I'll get this. So chi ij1 is given by this rho mm 0. So no population difference here. But the other term I can write in the same notation, and somehow convert the minus sign into a plus sign, etc. And so there should be a bracket here. I get these two terms. where I'll have this optical matrix element product at the top, even for a first single order process, one photon process, and I'll have this omega nm minus omega p plus I gamma nm kind of a term, and omega nm plus omega p plus I gamma nm kind of a term. Okay, and if you remember clearly, so this term looks like a Lorentzian, and if mu was a real number, then it'll yeah, okay. So so this product you can explicitly show that this will always be a real number actually. Okay, and then the whole of this omega dependence etc. is just controlled by this denominator term, which looks exactly like a Lorentzian. Okay, so if I separate the imaginary part etc., then the imaginary part will have the form of explicitly a Lorentzian. It looks like this etc., where the full width at the half maxima is just controlled by this term gamma mn. So the imaginary part, small imaginary part, etc., or the broadening, and this half. So full maximum at so full width at half maxima is given by 2 gamma mn basically. Okay, so that's the imaginary part, and imaginary part of chi is exactly related to the absorption spectrum. So I can send in light. I know what light intensity I send in, and I look at, let's say, transmitted light, and I look at what intensity light I have received, and I can calculate the difference of that, etc. So that gives me absorption, and that absorption is precisely proportional to the imaginary part of chi ij. So I can show. So I have not done explicit calculations, but I put in this P in the Maxwell's equation, and then I can calculate the intensity of the transmitted light, etc. I can show that the absorbed amount of energy, absorbed amount of light will be proportional to this chi ij. So if I look at absorption, which I experimentally measure, then I'll see exactly similar kind of peak centered around this omega mn and 2 gamma nm width basically. Okay, and this is just one transition. So if I have a multi-level system, then I'll have omega nm, omega, so 1 2, omega 2 3, omega 3 4. So I'll have multiple lines with multiple widths, etc. And that is how we see the optical spectrum. So all the excited states, let's say, of atomic systems, etc. In fact, that is how we analyze, let's say, how we know, what is the concentration of, let's say, materials on the sun. So if we analyze sunlight, etc., then we can actually calculate that for, this kind of transitions, etc. These are the widths and these are the this, and that we can do a back calculation and infer it is coming from which elements and so on. Okay, so doing this kind of an analysis is how we know that predominantly, let's say, hydrogen is what contributes to sun's light and things like that. Okay, because the omega nm position changes based on z and things like that. So if we have a lot of data, very careful data, etc., we can analyze that and we can predict that this is the intensity coming from this transition. Similar transition for let's say lithium is there, but it is of this amplitude, etc. And the amplitude we can calculate explicitly using the wave functions, etc., of lithium atom, hydrogen atom, etc. And then doing this analysis, we can actually predict. So this is very accurate actually. Okay, and this was instrumental in giving rise to the birth of quantum mechanics, etc. So the major problem which gave birth to quantum mechanics was one of these basically the optical spectrum of light, whatever we observe, etc., in experiments, atomic clouds, etc., we were not able to explain using whatever was known earlier. So coming back, so this is the imaginary part. I can also plot the real part of chi, etc., and the imaginary and the real part look like this. So the real part looks almost like a derivative of this. So this curve is rising, rising, rising. It rises, 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 and then it suddenly falls whenever I go down. So the derivative is negative for quite some time. And then, of course, I start this. So, the slope is again turning positive here, and then it will just go. Okay. So these are and the real part of chi, there are other experiments where it will manifest. So it doesn't manifest in absorption, but it will manifest in other places. So one example is polarization of light. Okay. So I just mentioned that I measure the intensity of the transmitted light with respect to the absorbed light. So the I transmitted divided by I incident is, I'll call the absorption, let's say, coefficient, and that will look like imaginary of chi ij. I can do another experiment. So I can take light, so I can send light of a specific polarization, and I can measure, let's say, both either the reflected light or the transmitted light, etc. And I can measure its polarization. So you find that, interaction with matter also changes the polarization. So the angle at which light was incident, it shifts a bit, matlab. Okay. So that polarization rotation I calculate, and that polarization rotation, you will see that that is related to this chi ij. So the real part of the chi ij, actually. Okay. So this within linear response, I wanted to stop here, and then we will just see an example of nonlinear response in the next class. So if there are any questions, you can ask me now. Okay, so I'll just share it again. Just give me a minute.